did that is because 3 out of their last 5 years, they were at 101, they were at 100 and 500, I mean, you know, so they were looking at consistently over that 100,000, so, and unfortunately, the next limit is 150,000 gallons. That does not, by any way, shape, or imagination, say that they are spreading 150,000
They're
gallons.
capable of that, which
Of
would
course
mean
they're capable
they
of
would
it,
have
but
to have
that,
the
but
water.
that, but that's the next
They would have
limit.
to have the capacity of
And
water.
that's why we went through the Act
Right.
250 amendment process. I
Right.
mean, you know, I
That's-
sat here and did that.
You know what I'm saying? If they're gonna have the water capacity to do that, should they do that?
Let's let Ed finish his,
Sorry, Ed.
Okay, so let's just say we're at about 100,000 gallons per day of waste that is leaving the facility. The mass balance doesn't seem to make sense. If we aren't drawing that amount of water, where is the rest of the water coming from? Part of our conservation effort is when we take the whey that comes off the bat, we put it through a membrane system, and so we concentrate the whey, and the water that is left over is polished permeate. It is pure water, it's soft distilled water. We use it to feed the boilers, we use it to feed CIP systems, so not all of the water comes from the wells. A lot of it comes from milk that is brought into the facility, so that's where the other water does come from in the facility. In our petition currently, when we talk about the permit that we're required, it is a non-transient, non-community public water supply permit, which we found out we needed and did apply for. The reason, we are a food plant, and through the USDA, FDA, US Public Health, we're supposed to have a qualified water supply for processing. So logically, if we felt we had water supply that is good for food consumption for the products that we're producing, it would certainly be satisfactory for our employees. So when we found out we needed the permit, we did apply for it, and that is the water source permit that we need to carry for domestic use of water in the facility. So that's, we have a choice to use our wells to do that and apply for that source permit, or it was suggested, since the village already has approved water source, that we could connect to the village water supply and use that for domestic usage. Now, here's the calculations that we use for this. The 15 gallons per employee per day is not like a residence. These people are here for 8 hours a day, and that's why that estimated number is given. For the buildings that we have here, we have roughly about 260 employees on average, 5 days a week, and if you do the math, it works out to be about 78.
okay. And it's cheaper, you feel, to replumb the whole campus than to,
It's a permanent solution for us, and it is an economic decision, yes.
okay. Any other questions or comments? Okay, then we'll take this up again. Why don't I say for now, we'll try to take it up at our next meeting. If it doesn't look like I can gather all this information by then, I'll try to let everybody know. And we'll take it up at the following meeting, but we'll shoot for next time.
Great, thank you, sir.
Can you just kind of give me a brief list of things that you wanted from me out of that, because you mentioned there was some documents you wanted.
Well, I could ask you, Jill, do you have any official, I mean, you've given us a lot already to look at, but none of it was generated by you. I think what would be helpful to have from you maybe is a list of things you think we should look at,
Okay,
and then we will go after
I
that.
can try, I don't know that I'm gonna be able to compile that in 2 weeks.
Well,
I have a lot of
whatever you,
concerns.
well, it would be helpful if you could
2 weeks.
compile it before, within the next few days. No, just some thoughts about, like you gave us this Johnson Company document, but I
Yeah,
would like to know who I should talk to at the Johnson Company.
well, this was part of the, I inquired about the 3 wells that were being dug, and that was the part of that Freedom of Information Act, and this was all sent to me. There was 200 some odd pages that were sent in a packet to me. In there was this source protection plan, and that's the first that I had seen of any of this. I had no knowledge that any of this was going on. So
Okay,
It was a quick education for me, let me tell you. And they warned of a hearing, actually, some of the information I got, never received from them until after the hearing that was June, I think it was June 2nd or whatever date I gave you before.
Were private wells ever affected by the cream?
There are some of us that are complaining that we were having, well, our wells are diminishing.
Is it noted gallons per minute, I guess, then, or?
Nobody ever did test before.
No, originally, right.
Right, so there's nothing to compare to. That's the unfortunate part. Had the actual permits been
Wouldn't this,
applied for, which were not, through the Act 250 permitting process, they would have done all this investigation. They would have done all of these tests to make sure that none of our wells were affected.
if they tapped into town water, wouldn't that ease private wells?
It may not, because if they're
If
in the
it's
same aquifer.
then it
Right,
wouldn't matter.
right. So the other problem there being was that I did have troubles, and I did produce that as evidence in 2002, where I didn't know what was going, when they originally drilled my well up on the hill, it was just, I had so much water that it started eroding out my lawn. So Monash came in and they did drill my well, and they had to put a diversion pipe, it's probably about that big around, I don't know what the size of that would be, off from my well as an overflow pipe, and it ran out to the ditch, of the town, the town ditch.
well, I've seen that.
And it was flowing so much, it was at full pipe, because it had started to erode out my lawn. They said, this is the only solution, we'll put this in so it'll divert the water.
And now you're saying maybe that's.
Well, I had to call them up because in 2002, I didn't have enough water. And they came up and I noticed that there was nothing coming out of the overflow, so originally I thought maybe something's wrong with my pump. And I called up Monash since they put it in, and they didn't come out, they sent 2 men out. They went and they examined my well, and they discovered that there was no water coming out of the overflow. So they said, well, maybe it's frozen. It was in February. They said, maybe it's frozen. So they thawed out the overflow pipe,
Yeah.
and nothing came out. So then they opened the lid on the well to discover that the water wasn't even touching the overflow pipe anymore. Now, sunset time, they tried claiming that maybe it was buildings up above me and stuff, but we had a huge farm up there, which David Smith had. Those cattle and stuff would have used a lot of water. I assume that farm would have had to have used a lot of water, and that went out of business, so that wouldn't have been affecting, I actually should have had more water.
Well, let's not.
Right, because you don't.
This is all
But
speculation.
this was it, that's what happened, and that's how I noticed that. I
Right.
sincerely, and I got a canceled check to prove I called Monash because I noticed my water, and my neighbor did too. He noticed he used to water his ducks and stuff from his overflow, and they just didn't have it.
You're thinking it's a possibility that it's related.
It could be, and I've spoken to a hydrologist that said it's very possible that this could be a problem.
Is this how you found out you were in the source protection plan?
I found out I was in the source protection plan quite by accident. I found out because I did the Freedom of Information Act, and when I did, to A&R, and when I did that to the Agency of Natural Resources, part of the source protection plan came back and it showed that I was in all 3 well source protection areas, as is a great deal of the town of Cabot. It extends almost up, I think, from the way I read the map, almost up to Melvin's and around that whole,
The whole village of Cabot.
yeah, could be affected. That's why the well contamination rates should be of concern to people. There's a lot of issues here that really should be addressed, and I just want to make sure that our water's safe. I want to make sure that there's enough water for everybody's future. I don't think that's unreasonable. I'm just trying to look out for everybody. Because I got the information, because I asked for it, was why this kind of has landed in my lap, and I feel like under obligation really to share it with people, because this should be of concern to people. Your water is something you aren't gonna be able to buy it after a while.
So what I guess what I want from you is if you get in the next few days or week is a list of documents that you're aware of that might be relevant.
Rodney Pingreed heard the same argument that they were disposing of milk. Well, I think it would be a pretty bulimic business practice to have the milk haulers and everything to haul in milk, to be disposing of milk on the fields. I think you'll find that that's made into a product, which is yogurt, or I guess they do still make specialty cheeses here. Those types of things. I can't really see them hauling in milk and putting it through drains and hauling milk out and spraying it on the field, so I think that is totally bogus.
I don't understand that comment, Jill. We bring milk in and we process it, so I don't know what you're
You
talking about.
process it,
Bringing
but
milk
there's
in
like,
and throwing
there's
milk
like
on
curds, and then there's like whey. The whey goes to the Middlebury plant for processing in whey drinks, crackers, and all number of things. Your curds, obviously, are used to make either whatever you're gonna do, the yogurt, the whatever you're going to do, the cheese, the cottage cheese, however you're going to use it. That is the whole essence of making cheese. So all there's left is dirty vats.
Yeah, no, I think all you're saying is that the water left over from those processes accounts for the additional, for the extra 25,000 gallons.
I might be able to clarify. I worked with Shelburne Farms for a little bit doing cheese making. There's no water from the milk that's left over after the cheese making process. That's mostly in the whey or in the curd.
Unless you remove it like you.
You know, use membrane systems, Tyler, and they're sophisticated systems that are fine enough that they'll keep the whey solids behind and allows the water to go. So that water is soft distilled water through membrane system. That's the latest technology.
Excuse me, you are?
I'm Tanya Hunt.
And you?
Peter Drilling. Jamele.
Thank you.
So, if I can sum it up, your concern, Jill, is that this application could conceivably lead to a greater demand on the aquifer.
Right, and because this has never been mapped, I've been told this, I was told this by a couple of different hydrologists that I've consulted about this, because they said this is such a demand on the aquifer. This could be one continuous aquifer that we have here, because of the type of soil that we have. And because of this, you know, if they're disposing, say, of 100,000 gallons a day, it's being put into trucks and shipped off, so the water's not being replenished. And they said this could start causing problems, and this could start having really severe implications on the headwaters to the Winooski. This could affect all of our water. That's why I just really want to suggest that if this technique of mapping is available, and it's something that we can do, I would really like to see us try to get the grant, try to do the mapping of this, and make sure that everything's safe before we proceed with just, you know, handing this away, because it's not something we can ever get back.
If I could, they're currently using this water now, and we're all kind of in the same system currently.
Right.
And what he's planning on doing is stopping using the wells and use our
No,
water
they're still
instead.
going to use the wells, they aren't gonna
Yeah,
stop using
They
the
will
wells.
still be permitted to draw
Right.
the same amount of water from those wells.
This just
Plus-
would afford them the opportunity to
May I
get additional water.
Yes.
Now, the creamery is probably, if you ran out of water as well as the town of Cabot, wouldn't you be, that would affect the creamery, wouldn't it? I mean,
We'd go
Are they-
someplace else.
okay, are you interested in, or has the creamery looked into any aquifer mapping at all? Or, like, has that been in your mind at all?
No.
Ever?
Oh, it is not.
So if you run out of water, you're out of town, basically?
Mm.
Well, I'm not trying to pick sides or anything, I'm just
Yeah,
asking like.
it hasn't necessarily been our concern. I say a concern, it is always a concern that we have a good potable water supply to manufacture with. We have never heard any concerns about the aquifer being drawn down because of that. When we take a look at how far the aquifer is, when you think about it, of the 100,000 gallons that we put out, we actually put that back onto the land, and it essentially ends up back into it again. So.
Less runoff.
Not in
Right.
Cabot.
Now,
There's only one place they're spraying in Cabot, the rest of it's all going to other towns. So chances are it's not coming back to the aquifer.
I just feel like when that, it's a huge liability to the creamery themselves, just for their own well-being. I'm surprised that maybe there is no, in your eyes, the creamery's eyes, there is no concern with the size of our aquifer or the amount of water that's available. Is what I'm getting from you, probably?
I hadn't been personally involved in it, so I'm not sure.
Is
if
there
there's
somebody
been
from the
others in
creamery
the
that-
organization that have, but.
Is there somebody from the creamery or some representative that is involved with that? I mean, like, I just feel like it was one.
To be honest with you, Dan, I don't believe that, you know, that with the size of the aquifer that is here that we're aware of, that it wasn't of an immediate concern.
Okay, I have no idea how big our aquifer is. I'm
Yeah,
just-
our information that it was quite large and that drawing the amount of water that we had would not be
It's not that.
Well, I don't think there's any question that it's adequate right now for the amount of
Yeah.
water that's being drawn now, but the concern
The
that I'm
future.
hearing expressed is that what you're doing here is bypassing the Act 250 process in
Right.
order to increase the amount of water you can withdraw from your permitted wells
Mhm.
by tapping into our domestic water system.
I
And if
don't,
that's a-
I don't believe that's the intent, Caleb, in all honesty. I'm standing here before you, looking you in the eyes here. We have 105 gallons per minute permitted
Yeah.
with the A&R.
Possibly.
And what the Act 250 Commission is saying, at one point in time, he said you're going to use about 72.5 gallons per minute, which means you have more than adequate supply with your 105 gallons per minute that you have.
Right.
It's actually in their permits. I can provide you with that, Caleb, or anybody if you would like that, because I've researched those
I guess,
permits.
I guess the thing that bothers me is, we're fighting or discussing the same amount of water that we just looked at for 7 houses.
Yeah.
So anytime somebody
Less.
wants to put 7 houses on here, we're gonna be in this same boat. And we're gonna sit here and tell people, no, you
Yeah, but-
can't build Cabot any bigger because this is where we're at.
Yeah, but Ted, maybe that's why we need to have this map, so we do know what we're doing. You know, that's all I'm saying, is if this opportunity is here, and they'll do matching funds.
Matching.
Well,
Yeah, the federal government, well, there's quite a bit of grant money according to Eric right now to be able to pursue this, and I think that rather than acting impulsively, that maybe this is something that we could do. I think that should be part of the Cabot plan for the future, and I think we do have to be sure, because if they run out of water, you're right, we're losing business, but the whole town literally dries up. We don't know what we're dealing with here. And Ed Stanek was concerned, he said, had they have gone through the Act 250 permits, which they should have on all of these wells, all of these 3 wells that were dug, because they were all dug past June of 1970, which put them all within,
Those 3 wells on the hill,
that's when I got the drilling records for
my
it.
father drilled 2 of them.
Yeah, but I actually
just
have
telling you,
the,
that's
I
way
have the
before-
drilling records.
That's good, I'm telling you, my father drilled 2 of them.
Well, unless they gave you the drilling records wrong, I mean, I have them, I can show them to you, I don't have them
Where
here.
did they
but
get
I-
their water before they drilled the wells?
Well, they weren't as large back then. So, you know, they probably did have some wells, they said they had one over here by the old cheese plant.
let's not go back, I don't think there's any point in going that far back, but your point about the housing application is a good one. That's a huge amount of water we just allocated to them.
I
I
almost
think
said
the difference,
something
just a
bad.
minute, Joe. I think the difference is that this is a growing, Agrimark is growing, the cheese manufacturing is growing. And it's, what we don't have here in your request, Ed, is any projections for that growth and I know for the short term, in the immediate future, the use is gonna be the same as it is today. But this will relieve your existing wells of a demand of 78,000 gallons a month. And it makes that water available for you to use in the manufacturing process or the cleaning processes. And if you're gonna keep growing, you're gonna need more water than that. You know, you may need at some point 130, 140 gallons a day out of the wells. And I think maybe that's what's causing some of this uncertainty, is that this isn't like hooking on a house where we know, you know, how much water they're gonna use every day. We don't know how much water you're gonna be using in 10 years. And maybe it would make a difference or help, you know, allay some concern if there was a projection about your growth and the extra demands on water. And you know, especially in light of the fact that we just found out by reading our water ordinance that we don't have any way of limiting the amount of water you purchase once you're hooked on. We would have to enter into some negotiations with you about that. I think for an allocation this large and this uncertain, we would probably want to have some kind of contract, you know, specifying, you know, that the growth would be limited to a certain amount. But right now, as things stand,
You're not necessarily interested in growth as much as limiting the amount of water that we would, the maximum amount of water that we would take from the kill, is what you're saying.
Well, I'm saying it's not an invalid concern that the growth of the creamery may tax the aquifer. I mean, who knows? It might not, but it might. And
This is what Stanley was saying, if they had gone through the Act 250 process, they would have been monitoring this all these years. So we would know.
Who would be monitoring what exactly?
Act 250 would have been monitoring surrounding people's wells, the effects on the Winooski River. All of these different things would have been monitored all these years, so we would know this information, but now we don't know.
That's
I
the
mean, I-
question of Mr. Picola.
well, wait, hold. Tyler had a question, I think, before.
Yeah, I just wanted to note that when I was at UVM, I studied Cabot's Urban Development Action Grant, is that right?
Yeah.
The UDAG one?
UDAG.
And that back in the 80s, when Cabot got that grant, there was going to be a wastewater treatment facility put in the village, and the creamery was the co-applicant of that grant with the village or with the town. And at that time, they found it was either A&R or 250. Someone said that you need to put in this wastewater treatment plant. They found that the Winooski River couldn't properly assimilate the water that the creamery was taking out of the aquifer. So there was some indication back in the day that, you know, the wheels were turning, and some folks said that, yeah, you know, maybe down the road this could be a problem, and I think that's why they spray today.
Yeah.
So there has been a theme of withdrawal and recharge that has sort of been there, but has been suppressed, and I think the village was left holding the bag on the wastewater treatment plant. I think they had to build their own, and the 2 mil, I think it was like $2 million went somewhere else, I think.
No, we didn't get left holding any bag.
Okay.
We did very well by the UDAG grant.
Yeah, but I'm just talking in terms of wastewater and water related issues. You had to put in your own wastewater treatment plant without the UDAG funds. So there is this UDAG grant.
No, we used.
You did use some? Cool.
Yes.
Well, what about rolling that into this mapping of the aquifer? There's a really great possibility here for some stellar community development and common asset mapping. This is the whole village and the town here. We're talking about possibly sharing water, and it's corporate responsibility to do stuff like this. You know, there's a precedent being set, and I think that you guys are at a crossroads where you can really get the ball rolling on this and know what is going on, and then there wouldn't be issues.
Yes, and that could happen whether or not we, whatever we decide about this particular application, that mapping probably should go forward at some point. But I'm not sure. Is there a crisis looming here, Ed, for the creamery if we don't allocate this?
I don't say there's a crisis. We have an extension for a period of time here, and I can ask for another extension.
So we could take another couple of weeks maybe to look into this a little further and get some more information.
Yes,
from
absolutely.
A&R and
Absolutely.
Okay. I guess that would be how I would want to go about it. Put it off a couple more weeks and see if we can get some information from District 5 and from A&R about what their concerns are. So we're not hearing it third hand, or second hand.
I stole her thunder.
Oh, that's okay. I just had one question, Mr. McCullough. When you said that you had someone here that looked at the size of what you were seeing, so it didn't trigger any questions for the amount of what you could tap into. Who was it that you
I'm
had?
not sure that we did. I have an uncertainty on it. I said maybe somebody did. We do have individuals that may have looked at it in the past. I'm not a new employee with the Cabot operations, so someone back in 1986 may have looked at this already. So I
Is
was
there any
asking.
documentation to that effect, or?
I don't know at this point in time. I can't say.
Okay.
I guess the last time I saw anything was in 1988, and it was by Byron, I think his name was. I
Oh,
can
Tom.
provide you with that.
Tom, Brian,
I think so, I believe,
Sean.
Sean, I think, it could be. I can provide you with that if you'd like it.
What would that be? That would have been from the creamery.
Right, that's the only time I heard of them ever being concerned about any kind of, I guess, pollution issues at all.
88, that was something at the UDAG grant.
Yeah.
Well, any comments from you guys?
Seems like a lot for me to make a vote tonight, that's for sure, like you said. I understand that it's kind of apples to apples on the amount of water that was just passed, but this not being a residence, you said growth and whatnot. I don't know.
Okay, well, why don't we gather some more information and we'll try to be better informed.
It would be nice to have the newest metered readings too. I don't have those of what's coming up. Obviously, if they had metered readings in 2006 to 2008, they must have them currently.
Would they,
From those 3 wells. I've asked for them several times, but I've never obtained them.
do we know, not anything against, do we know that this is, I mean, anybody could print that off, or right here, I guess.
But this was done by the Johnson Company.
Okay,
the
the
Green
Johnson,
Line.
I just,
It was part of a source protection plan that I got a Freedom of Information Act for, which I showed you.
so Ed would even say that these are correct numbers that were taken
They
between
have
this
to
date
be.
and this date.
Yep.
And
Well,
can we-
Again, understand, Dan, these are our meters, they're our own readings that we've taken in the facility ourselves.
Right.
So, and again, some of them they were internal document meters, they aren't. So when we say someone's gonna read the meter today, they read it at 8 o'clock. Tomorrow they say, oh geez, I'm gonna read it at 1 o'clock. So it isn't the same
Exactly.
time every day. So when you take a look at, oh my gosh, you used 150,000 gallons of water today, but you take a look at the day next to it and say, geez, I only ran 70,000 gallons of water. Obviously, it was the timing of it. So it was for internal use only. It wasn't required by any regulatory agency
to this day,
to this
so
day.
nobody
No.
really knows
Right.
outside of the creamery what water is.
The average is the better reading, only because someday they may read it at 8 o'clock, the next day they may read it at 10 o'clock. So when you take a look at a month is a better measurement than a single day would be.
Right, a better.
Oh, that's what those were, was by month, Ed.
No.
Those were by
Well,
months.
I prepared them, Jill, so I guess I know what they were.
Even how accurate aquifer math that is and how much that would cost.
well, we can look into it.
They look like an average to each month to me, doesn't it to you?
Yeah, these are averages for,
I did the total at the end of the, adding all 3
What
together.
they did, what
well,
that
no,
is,
these
what-
are maximum days.
those are what he did is took a maximum daily to show what the maximum would be, because each one of the wells had a maximum gallon draw on it. But again, when you take a look at it, that what you see is 107 gallons maximum draw that day. If you take a look at the day previous, if I showed you the whole month, the day previous or the day after may have been considerably less.
But I took the average over the 2 years for the figures they gave, so I thought that was those are the only figures I had to work with.
Yeah, the average is
Yeah,
probably
don't-
79.
It's still over the 72.5.
That's a max though, so don't,
And what do you-
that's not the actual usage.
We're just looking at, but I mean, are meters tested, or, I mean, this seems,
Well, what's more important to me than how accurate the number is what the change in the numbers would be over time.
Right.
Like if you, I mean, here we've got,
All the numbers are pretty consistent.
yeah,
yeah,
right.
and this is over a period of 2 years, but I'm wondering if you go back, if we went back to the merger, say,
I
you
don't
have-
have,
don't
we
have
didn't
that
have
data?
meters, I think they, and I'd have to go back, I think it was 205 was the, 205 or 206 might be the earliest record that we have that the meters being installed and keeping track of them.
could you provide us with some samples from that earlier time and then possibly with
I
some,
think you,
Outdated.
let me go back and take a look and see what.
I think I remember back in 1986, perhaps it was, that their disposal was, I think, around 64,000 gallons per day. Of course, that included waste and whey at that point. And I'm questioning too, because these from 2006 to 2008 were before they got the increase in that permit. Back then, they were allowed to dispose of 100,000 gallons a day, so I'm wondering if those figures have changed yet again.
would
They might.
you have some data for last year and the year before? Okay, that would be useful. So any other comments about this or questions? So I guess our plan is to contact the District 5 Commission and A&R and ask them for any further information they can give us, and ask you to give us any extra
I'll
data you
update
can.
the water records and I'll confirm the earliest records that we do have. And we're talking about water meter readings. Jill had talked
Well,
about
how much you
discharge
pumped out of your
limits. Yes, that's right. All we're talking about is
Well,
water meter
they might be
readings.
relative, Beth, you could admit, they could be.
Okay. So that's,
When you say we will,
I knew you were gonna ask that.
I need to know if I have this information for
The only, I don't really mind doing this kind of stuff, Tara, but I don't get paid for it.
And you do, just like the rest of us, $900 a year. Actually, you might even get a few pennies more.
Don't tell me.
Because you're sitting in the middle.
I'll
Oh,
talk to
dear.
you more about that.
Okay.
They know you can do it for $350 a year.
And yeah,
Yep.
mad here.
Do what for 350?
So what?
That's what you're gonna do?
Down in Danville, only gets $350 a year.
Select Shore should do something about that.
Well, that's up to them.
He's sitting on this board.
I didn't even know that was simple, so,
So you walk in the door, right?
no, move it before.
It's the only reason I do this.
Is that $5 an hour?
No,
Because of that
it's a
buck
buck.
a month.
About-
When he came in for that year.
Okay, any other comments or questions? Yes.
Yeah, I guess if there's a chlorination plant on site, why again were we trying to get potable water from the town if you're
Yeah,
making potable water on
That was
site?
potable water, that was the potable water schematic.
That was the piece that was the one thing I was confused about.
What do you consider portable water?
Drinkable.
Drinkable, this is what it
Sorry.
says right here, this was part of that source protection plan too. This says Agrimart, Cabot Creek, potable water they claim is for use for people.
Okay,
Drinkable.
the
Water
question,
storage, reservoir, and schematic. This is,
do you wanna quickly answer the question and?
You know, it has to do with the water source, Tyler. The water source has to be tested for all the different components that are in it. It isn't just taking water and chlorinating it to make sure there's no bacteria in it. Take a look at the mineral content. There's a whole series of water testing that they do on it. So it isn't just a chlorinated water supply. Did I answer that?
Yeah, I thought Jill had mentioned that you supply potable water already via your plant to the cheese makers and and folks in the plant already.
Yeah,
Don't they already?
There's another level of testing that's required for drinking water.
So right now, that water that people are drinking at the plant, it's not passed those tests.
Bottled water.
Well, it's passed all the requirements to use for people to drink in the plant, but when you're talking about a community, more than 25 people, then your requirements are greater for the testing requirements for it.
And whose requirements are these, A&R?
Through the A&R Water Supply Division. Yep.
So how do you? It's been a community of more than 25 for a while now, right?
Explain some
Yes,
of it, too.
thanks.
This is their risk assessment on those wells.
So you're
Who's done that?
in
That was,
in
Johnson
violation
Company.
of,
That came
something
in that
right
same
now.
source protection plan.
okay. And it's cheaper, you feel, to replumb the whole campus than to,
It's a permanent solution for us, and it is an economic decision, yes.
okay. Any other questions or comments? Okay, then we'll take this up again. Why don't I say for now, we'll try to take it up at our next meeting. If it doesn't look like I can gather all this information by then, I'll try to let everybody know. And we'll take it up at the following meeting, but we'll shoot for next time.
Great, thank you, sir.
Can you just kind of give me a brief list of things that you wanted from me out of that, because you mentioned there was some documents you wanted.
Well, I could ask you, Jill, do you have any official, I mean, you've given us a lot already to look at, but none of it was generated by you. I think what would be helpful to have from you maybe is a list of things you think we should look at,
Okay,
and then we will go after
I
that.
can try. I don't know that I'm gonna be able to compile that in 2 weeks.
Well,
I have a lot of
whatever,
concerns.
well, it would be helpful if you could
2 weeks.
compile it before, within the next few days. No, just some thoughts about, like you gave us this Johnson Company document, but I
Yeah,
would like to know who I should talk to at the Johnson Company.
well, this was part of the, I inquired about the 3 wells that were being dug, and that was the part of that Freedom of Information Act, and this was all sent to me. There was 200 some odd pages that were sent in a packet to me. In there was this source protection plan, and that's the first that I had seen of any of this. I had no knowledge that any of this was going on. So
Okay,
it was a quick education for me, let me tell you. And they warned of a hearing. Actually, some of the information I got never received from them until after the hearing that was June, I think it was June 2nd or whatever date I gave you before.
Were private wells ever affected by the creamery?
There are some of us that are complaining that we're having, well, our wells are diminishing.
Is it noted gallons per minute, I guess, then, or?
Nobody ever did test before.
No, originally, right.
Right, so there's nothing to compare to. That's the unfortunate part. Had the actual permits been
Wouldn't this,
applied for, which were not, through the Act 250 permitting process, they would have done all this investigation. They would have done all of these tests to make sure that none of our wells were affected.
if they tapped into town water, wouldn't that ease private wells?
It may not, because if they're in
If
the
it's
same aquifer,
then it
right.
wouldn't matter.
Right. So the other problem there being was that I did have troubles, and I did produce that as evidence in 2002, where I didn't know what was going, when they originally drilled my well up on the hill, it was just, I had so much water that it started eroding out my lawn. So Monash came in, and they did drill my well, and they had to put a diversion pipe, it's probably about that big around, I don't know what the size of that would be, off from my well as an overflow pipe, and it ran out to the ditch, of the town, the town ditch.
well, I've seen that.
And it was flowing so much, it was at full pipe, because it had started to erode out my lawn. They said, this is the only solution, we'll put this in so it'll divert the water.
And now you're saying maybe that's.
Well, I had to call them up because in 2002, I didn't have enough water. And they came up and I noticed that there was nothing coming out of the overflow, so originally I thought maybe something's wrong with my pump. And I called up Monash since they put it in, and they didn't come out, they sent 2 men out. They went and they examined my well and they discovered that there was no water coming out of the overflow. So they said, well, maybe it's frozen. It was in February. They said, maybe it's frozen. So they thawed out the overflow pipe
Yeah.
and nothing came out. So then they opened the lid on the well to discover that the water wasn't even touching the overflow pipe anymore. Now, sunset time, they tried claiming that maybe it was buildings up above me and stuff, but we had a huge farm up there, which David Smith had. Those cattle and stuff would have used a lot of water. I assume that farm would have had to have used a lot of water, and that went out of business, so that wouldn't have been affecting, I actually should have had more water.
Well, let's not.
Right, because
This
But
all
this
speculation.
was it, that's what happened, and that's how I noticed that. I
Right.
sincerely, and I got a canceled check to prove I called Monash because I noticed my water, and my neighbor did too. He noticed he used to water his ducks and stuff from his overflow, and they just didn't have it.
you're thinking it's a possibility that it's related.
It could be, and I've spoken to a hydrologist that said it's very possible that this could be a problem.
Is this how you found out you were in the source protection plan?
I found out I was in the source protection plan quite by accident. I found out because I did the Freedom of Information Act, and when I did, to A&R, and when I did that to the Agency of Natural Resources, part of the source protection plan came back and it showed that I was in all 3 well source protection areas, as is a great deal of the town of Cabot. It extends almost up, I think, from the way I read the map, almost up to Melvin's and around that whole,
The whole village of Cabot.
yeah, could be affected. That's why the well contamination rates should be of concern to people. There's a lot of issues here that really should be addressed, and I just want to make sure that our water's safe. I want to make sure that there's enough water for everybody's future. I don't think that's unreasonable. I'm just trying to look out for everybody. Because I got the information, because I asked for it, was why this kind of has landed in my lap, and I feel like under obligation really to share it with people, because this should be of concern to people. Your water is something you aren't gonna be able to buy it after a while.
So what I guess what I want from you is if you get in the next few days or week is a list of documents that you're aware of that might be relevant to this.
Okay.
Anything else?
It's not quite the same, but
How about, well, expected to cooperate with the town's independent efforts to collect whatever information is required. That work?
That works.
yeah, it's better just to have the word in there, I think. Town's independent efforts, that would include getting an independent facility to test, I suppose.
Yeah, it's kind of getting into semantics now, but I guess it would, in my mind, make more sense to use independent testing than independent efforts, because it's,
Yeah,
that, I guess it's a moot point anyway, so.
I make a motion that we vote on this one way or the other to grant the creamery their water of 2,600 gallons as your proposal.
Do you want to move the, okay. You're moving the document as written?
Yes.
I'd second it.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? And that would be maybe the amendment.
Amendment.
We hold the right to do anything under these, so I mean, it doesn't even matter if we say independent, because we could shut it down and rewrite that anyway, couldn't we?
Well, they may not have to comply with
Once
your.
the motion's been made, I'm sorry. you
Oh,
guys are done.
he was asking a
Well,
theoretical
we're
question.
talking about a,
Yeah, but we can
Possibly
talk this
amendment.
fine, right?
Right. That's what I
Yeah.
thought.
Yeah.
okay, when and if we want them, their input, we can ask. creamery will cooperate with the towns. No, I just seem to find safe to cooperate with the town in collecting whatever information is required.
It looks perfect to me. We have all our bases covered, it looks like.
Independent testing is what we were looking for.
Yeah, I think that's covered. Okay, so what is the amendment? Just strike the words "be expected to." The creamery will cooperate with the town in collecting whatever information is required to ascertain the quantity and potability of the creamery's own sources of groundwater. And there's another place up here I left out, and be it further, it's on like the third resolve. All right, how about after sources of groundwater, we just put in a clause that says including independent testing.
That covers that.
All right. I'd like to ask Ed if he objects to any of that.
I do not.
Okay.
Including independent testing by the town of the creamery's proprietary water resources. Is that all right? Does that make everybody happy?
Yeah.
Okay. So this section would read, resolve that if the town of Cabot should at any time undertake to study or map the groundwater resources available to customers of the Cabot municipal water supply, the creamery will cooperate with the town in collecting whatever information is required to ascertain the quantity and potability of the creamery's own sources of groundwater, including independent testing by the town of the creamery's proprietary water resources, and be it further resolved that the creamery will pay all costs.
What?
Of the hookup.
Oh, the hookup, yeah.
Yeah.
Very eloquent.
I'd like to resolve the fund.
No,
They did already, yeah.
Just making the water connections.
Your eyes get picking.
I was like,
Yeah, it seems like you're,
I'm hanging in, Jill, I'm hanging
I
in.
didn't hear any snoring.
Let's just say still paying attention.
sounded like you were in a jazz
I'm not taking that back to Pratt. Sure.
band. Still awake. It's a good thing you didn't have the alcohol.
I was thinking the same way.
Okay, so let's vote on the amendment. Has that been moved and seconded?
No.
I'll move the amendment.
I'll second it.
Any discussion about the amendment? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, so we're back to the question, which is
To grant the creamery.
to adopt this resolution as amended. With all its conditions. So is there any further discussion on that? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay. This is, why don't we print up a clean copy of this? Did I email this to you?
I haven't seen it.
No.
If you
Okay.
email it to me tomorrow, I can forward it along.
Appreciate it. Okay. I'll take it home and clean it up.
Can you email me a copy too?
Okay, give me, I had your email.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all, I appreciate your considerations. It's long deliberations. We appreciate it.
Yeah. And just so we're clear, Jill, I appreciate all the work you've done on this. and
Thank you.
Thanks so much. Yeah, good night, Ed.
Good night.
Okay, transportation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Come again, but not too often.
I think this is the first one I ever attended was the other night.